Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shelby Smith. And welcome back to the Building in a Small Town podcast. I'm super excited today to have my first guest. It's not my husband. I have Robbie Erickson of Small Town Tattoo, who happens to be my neighbor across the road and also gets a lot of my experimental sourdough loaves. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for the experimental sourdough loaves.
You bet. You know, it's one of those things. Growing up, I was obsessed with making cinnamon rolls for some reason. And my parents just kept letting me do it. I didn't understand the concept of letting them rise, so I made a lot of bricks. So luckily you never had to eat those.
No, but I would have though.
Yeah, I think that I have gotten considerably better since then. So anyways, we'll start off with your background. Where'd you grow up? I don't think you're from here.
No. Grew up for a little while in Des Moines in the Drake neighborhood. And then we moved out to Grimes, and I grew up in Grimes most of my life. After my time in Grimes, moved out to Maryland, lived in Maryland for 4 or 5 years, came back to Des Moines to Ankeny, Ankeny to Collins.
Okay.
That's my timeline.
So, like, Grimes, you are DCG.
DCG, yeah, go Mustangs.
I was going to say, DCG Mustangs.
That's right.
I went to Nevada K through 8, so I think DCG was in our conference.
When you were there, yeah. When I lived in Grimes, man, it was a tiny town. Like, I think my graduating class was 60 some odd, you know? And now they're up to the 300s.
I was going to say, at Nevada, I think I had 127.
Yeah, I bet when you were in school, they're probably 1 to 150 class range. I bet
yeah.
It blew up quick. Grimes grew fast.
Yes. Yeah. So then you were in Grimes before it was cool.
I was in Grimes when it was cool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I like it. Okay, and then what took you out to Maryland?
College. Yeah, art school.
Okay. What art school did you go to?
The Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, Maryland.
Didn't even know it existed. You went to Baltimore.
Yeah, it's I think ranked 4th in the world right now still.
Dang.
It was 2 when I was there, 1 or 2.
Okay.
I was gonna go to the School Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, but my worry there was it was connected to Tufts University.
Yeah.
And there was no way I was going to do the liberal side of my degree at an Ivy League school. So then I go out to Maryland, and I'd never been out there, but I didn't know much about the school either, but my high school art teacher, he went to school there by chance. So I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't ask too many questions anyway. I get there and I find out that most of my classes I'm gonna be taking at Johns Hopkins University. So same boat at the end of the day.
I was gonna say.
It worked out though.
Yeah, very freaking cool.
Yeah, it was just a good school. They offered a decent scholarship and stuff too. So at the time, I just wanted to skateboard and make art. So Baltimore was like a hub for skateboarding. I could go anywhere in my mind, you know, and we did, man. We went to Philly and New York all the time skating, Jersey. We'd go down south to Richmond. We were skateboarding everywhere. So part of the reason that my decision with college was based off of where I could do the most skateboarding.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool.
It worked out.
That is awesome. So when did you start getting into art? Was that just you had pencil in your hand right away, or did you
I don't feel like I've ever deeply thought about that.
Did you have a teacher?
I made it. Oh, okay. So it was in elementary school, I guess, when I first thought this is cool. For one reason or another, I needed a picture of Curious George. And back then, it wasn't like Stone Age by any means, but you couldn't just get on your computer and print out a picture of Curious George. And I needed it, I think, for school the next day. One way or another, I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and my dad, who was a hobby artist, drew a picture of Curious George right before my eyes. And I was it was like watching magic.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, how is he doing this? So that got me more interested during art class. And then I made a mallard duck in 4th grade. And it was just one of them little things, you know, in life. But my art teacher displayed it for the month in the hallway. She had like a glass display case.
Was it like sculpture or was it a drawing?
It was clay, yeah.
Oh,
it was
okay.
a little clay sculpture of a duck, and then we had hand painted them. And the challenge of making that duck, I think, is what probably hooked me on art. I've always liked challenges, and that's definitely what drew me to become an artist, was constantly creating problems and solving them. But that was kind of like, that was probably the breaking point as to when I thought this is something, at least I'm interested in deeply. And then it was just kind of a natural progression from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And how was the rest of school for you? Was it
like high school or college?
just
school?
in general, like school in general? Did you
Yeah.
like the other subjects, or was it like art and then the rest of it? I'm just gonna do
It was
this
just
stuff?
art. Yeah, I didn't like anything else. I didn't even
Yeah.
really like put myself forward in many other subjects unless I really liked the teacher, you know. But if it wasn't hands on, I wasn't in. I didn't care, you know. Like you had the classic example of the teacher telling you you're gonna use this stuff later in life. I knew I wasn't going to.
Yeah.
You know. And then I was a pretty decent athlete and quit sports my sophomore, junior year. And man, everyone thought I was crazy, but I just wanted to make art all the time. That's all I wanted to do, was make art and skateboard.
Yeah.
So it all makes sense now, I'm
Right.
sure, to everybody. But back then, you know, like I had friends on my baseball team, they wouldn't even talk to me anymore.
Because you quit.
Yeah, because I quit. But I had, the challenge wasn't there. You know, you were a gifted athlete and still are. Like sometimes the challenge isn't there. You might be better than everybody, but if the challenge isn't there, why would you do it?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was at. I was
Right.
like, this isn't hard.
Yeah, and you don't, and it's weird, I've kind of realized this about basketball over the last, I would say 10 years or so, like, might be really good at it, but I don't love it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't love the sport, and I feel like you get that. Like, I think that you're saying essentially the same thing. This is what I'm hearing you say, is I'm good at it, I am gifted at it, but that doesn't mean I love it.
Yeah.
And so, like, is that really what I want my life pursuit to be? Because I've always said, like, I hate coaching. Hate it. Like, I don't like it.
See, I love coaching.
And see, I've had to do it a couple times in my life, and I just, oh gosh, I hate it. But I think part of it is I just don't love the sport, and so it's not my passion. So I totally can understand that. So then the sports that you played baseball. What else? Anything else?
Oh man, I played about every sport growing up. I really did. Baseball, hockey, wrestling, soccer. I'm forgetting quite a few there for sure. I mean, cross country, track, football. I mean, I played wrestling, everything.
Typical small school kid. You just kind of do everything.
Did it all. Yeah.
Because there's like nobody else you have to. Cool. And then, so when did you get into skateboarding? Like, what, you said you didn't grow up in the Stone Age, but you definitely didn't grow up in the social media age where you like get exposed to a bunch of stuff. So where did you first? I wouldn't consider, Iowa maybe now with their new Des Moines Tour thing, like it's become more of a thing. But like, where would you get exposed to skateboarding in Grimes, Iowa?
We had a kid come to our school in 8th grade. He was an alternative school kid. Been kicked out of every Des Moines school, all that stuff. But his mother and stepdad moved to Grimes, and one way or another, they let him into school in 8th grade for us. I don't think he lasted into 9th grade even, but he skateboarded, and I literally, we were waiting for the bus one day, and I was like, hey, let me see that thing, and I hopped on it, and I just ate it, instantly. What the hell is under my feet, kind of thing. And it's probably the same thing. Like, the challenge was there, right? So I was like, I think I'm gonna try that again.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, like, I'm making ramps in shop class and shutting my street down so I can have my little skate park out there and all that stuff. And it just ended up consuming me to a point because of the immense challenge of it. And as you're saying, back then you couldn't hop on YouTube and learn how to do a kickflip.
No.
You had to find somebody or just learn it on your own, So back in the 90s, skateboarding was a huge challenge. It still is, but I don't think nearly to the degree it was back then. So yeah, man, it was the same thing. It's probably gonna be a repetitive thing with this, but the challenge was there. There's few things harder than skateboarding at the end of the day, if you're pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your proudest, I don't know, do you call it a trick? Do you call it a skill? I am completely skateboarding ignorant.
You can call it whatever you want.
I was gonna say,
I don't even know what they're calling them anymore anyway. There's probably a different name for it nowadays, but My proudest like skateboarding moment?
Yeah, like one where you'd been working on it for however long and you finally got it, and it's just like that. Hell yeah! Like I just did that.
Probably my first handrail.
Okay.
Yeah,
because
that like
cool.
you go like the handrail that's on the stair set, right?
Yes. Okay.
So skating up to it, I've done a lot of stairs in my life as far as tricks over stairs, but those handrail is a whole different level of commitment. So yeah, probably the first time I stuck a trick on a handrail.
Okay.
It's a scary moment in life.
I would imagine.
And it's over real fast, so you're just kind of like, oh, I just did that.
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of reflection in that moment in time, but a lot of pride for sure.
And that would have been pre-cell phone video days, so nobody captured it.
Oh, I bet somebody. We had video cameras rolling quite a bit.
Yeah.
So maybe someone out there would have some footage of me skateboarding, but I've never seen any. That's for sure. I got like one tape from when I was in high school that has a few tricks on it, but that's it.
That's awesome. At that point, like, were X Games a thing? Like, were they having competitions?
Yeah.
And started up and everything? Yeah,
like at this time when I got to the point of doing handrails, I mean, we're talking probably the early 2000s, I'd say. And Tony Hawk Pro Skater came out, so skateboarding was starting to become cool, you know, so yeah. There was all the big events and stuff like that were going on. Yeah.
Sweet. Was that ever something you were like, I could pursue that? Like, I could maybe go be like a Tony Hawk kind of thing?
I've never been. I've just never been me, man. No. I just wanted to skateboard. But I mean, I got a skateboard with a lot of my favorite professional skateboarders on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So that was cool. You know what I mean? But as far as like, I don't know, that kind of stuff goes, that's never been who I am. I just want to find the challenges and do them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then not worry about the rest of it, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And not necessarily monetize your hobbies.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I get that.
Yeah.
Some days I wish I need to remind myself, like, you don't have to monetize all of your hobbies. Very cool. So you were in the East Coast for 3 years, 5 years?
4 or 5, yeah, like 4.5-ish, something like that. 4 3/4, 5, somewhere around there, yeah.
Did you like it?
I have mixed feelings, memories, and emotions about the East Coast. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It was perfect for me at the time, but I haven't been back since, really, so I couldn't have liked it that much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rat race out there. Everyone's trying to get something from you. Everyone's trying to take advantage of you. You can't trust anybody at the end of the day out there. And there's not a lot of humble people. So it's not for me, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did it.
Was that your biggest culture shock, do you think, going from Grimes
hands down to Baltimore, Maryland? Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It was the first time in my life I was the only white person around even. You know what I mean? Which I wasn't even mentally prepared for that. Not that I had an adverse reaction to it or anything, but people did towards me, absolutely.
Right.
I'd never been robbed more in my life. I'd never even been robbed before. And in that first 6 months in Baltimore, I probably had been robbed 4 or 5 times, something like that. Yeah. Time to get a pit bull.
Yeah, well, it was time to learn a lesson. Little street smarts that you didn't quite pick up in Grimes, Iowa. I would say, so I went from where Ames to Philly. So
exact same.
And my roommate was 6'2", black girl from North Philly, and like she took me to a block party that freshman
in her neighborhood. That's funny because my freshman roommate was the same, but a male, and he was from I think Germantown, Philadelphia, and he did the same thing. Took me back for like family Thanksgiving, and then we partied afterwards. Yeah, well, and never done nothing like it in my life.
Yeah, and it was awesome. But I just remember our assistant coach being like, "You did what with the little girl from Iowa?" And she was just like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's who you're around. It's not it's not the area you're in." So. It's definitely culture shock. I kind of have to agree. East Coast is not necessarily my thing either.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was a good place to go. I think it's good to experience the difference. Makes you maybe appreciate the Midwest a little bit.
Yeah, no, East Coast is a great place for college, being that age and all that stuff. It's perfect for that, for sure.
There's tons going on.
Yeah.
For sure. There's
always something every night.
Yep. And there's opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have here, and you're exposed to things.
Sure.
And, like you said, you wouldn't have gotten to skate with the people that you guys skate with
in
the Midwest, especially, So there's advantages, but it's kind of how I feel about New York City too. Like, it's nice to visit, but I'd never want to live there.
No.
Sort of situation. So.
Same.
Cool. Sweet. So when you went out to school, were you, I don't even know how art and design school works. Look at me. You're being really stupid. Of like, can you take different tracks? Like, can you go like graphic design?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What did you do?
I was entered into the school as a ceramics major because that is what gave me my scholarship and acceptance into the school.
Okay.
So going in, I was just thinking my whole plan was to get out of the ceramic department. That wasn't something I wanted to pursue.
Didn't want to be there. Just have
I kind of experienced the top of that world to many degrees, and once again, the challenge wasn't there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into either the illustration department or the painting department, one of those two. So I weaseled my way after a semester into the illustration department and was accepted there. And then I transferred from there to a general fine arts major, and then GFA to printmaking. So my last 2 years at Maryland, I was a printmaking major.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you do as a printmaking? Like, what do you... Like...
So a printmaker, it's becoming a lost art, but let's say you're a painter.
Mm-hmm.
You made a painting. It's a great piece of work that you're proud of. Well, you can only sell one painting.
Sure.
But you can sell X amount of prints.
Sure.
So you go to a printmaker, and then that printmaker's job is to make the perfect duplication, replication of your art.
Right.
So you can sell a limited edition of prints.
Sure.
So printmakers are commissioned by artists to recreate their art. And then on top of that, every printmaker is going to make their own art too.
Right.
Yeah, that's what a printmaker is in a nutshell. There's a lot of different methods to printmaking,
mm-hmm.
but that's it in a nutshell.
Why do you say it's a dying art? Is it just because everything's becoming kind of digitized?
Yeah, because now the value of a lithograph isn't the same anymore.
Okay.
I suppose like most people don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
I have
no idea.
So if when it comes to being a fine artist, if you can make prints at a digital print shop that are probably of a higher quality, let's be honest,
Yeah.
For a fraction of the cost, why wouldn't you? You can still number them limited edition. You can still apply all the same things that a print would have. That comes with a print as well. So yeah, that's more than anything, that's why. And then on top of it, it's just the number of printmakers that can pass it down.
Sure.
Because printmaking dates back to the beginning of print.
Mm-hmm. And
if you go back in that history, that's a long time ago. So every decade, there's someone else that learned how to do it that's not going to pass it on. This guy included. I'm not a printmaker anymore. I can do it, but
it's not your.
I haven't been in a print shop since college. Yeah.
Interesting. So then I do want to ask you a little bit on the ceramics thing. You said you got to the top of the ceramics. Is that
pretty much?
You were making? What were you making? Like,
I was making, a little bit of everything, anything from custom tiles to stuff thrown on the pottery wheel to handmade slab pottery. A little bit of everything. I had entered three pieces of pottery into the National Scholastic Art and Writing Awards.
Uh-huh.
It won locally, and then was a gold key regionally, and then won on the national level. And so that was my first scholarship in college.
Just low-key national awards, no big deal.
Yeah, it's still around, the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. If there's any artist out there that in high school that won a good scholarship opportunity, that's a great one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
That's awesome.
So yeah, you get to a point on a pottery wheel, let's say, it's a very hard art to wrap your mind around, but once you get the feel, once everything's there, the only thing you can start playing with is form, and your form is limited to X amount of different ways of doing it. There's just not endless possibilities in the ceramic world.
Sure.
To many degrees, I guess there are, but there really aren't.
Yeah. And
so that's why, and pottery was something that was very accessible to me in high school. I could go up and throw on the pottery wheel 3 periods throughout the day if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas painting and drawing were not as immediately accessible, especially under instruction, which I would have needed with painting and drawing. So when I was in college, that's what I really wanted to learn, was how to paint and draw. And thankfully there was bountiful opportunities to do that at that school. So I did. But I had to get out of the ceramics department first.
Right.
To get out of there.
Yes.
And I ended up, so printmaking, they only allowed so many people into that program. It was a very small program. I think there was 8 in my graduating class. But the cool thing about the printmaking major was it opened up the whole university at your disposal. If I wanted to take a painting class, I could take a painting class as a printmaker because of the necessity of having to know how to paint, you know?
Sure.
So that's why I ultimately wanted to get in the printmaking department, was just so I could have the whole campus at my disposal. Whereas if I'm a ceramics major, I can't take painting classes. I think I was given 1 throughout my time there or something like that. Same with drawing, you know, I could take a lot of sculpture, a lot of metalwork, stuff like that, but I couldn't get into all the other departments as a ceramics major. But that was also the only way I could get into art school because my drawing and painting skills were pretty low.
Right, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put together a portfolio of drawings and there wouldn't have been one college professor in the nation that would have looked at that stuff and be like, yeah, let's take this kid. But my ceramics, I could get in everywhere, so.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was cool, yeah.
Very cool. So then what ended up being your favorite class in college?
In college? One of them I can't talk about because I don't know. I just can't. But it was called, I'll give a little, I won't drop any names or anything like that because this professor of mine is a pretty good friend still and I respect him. But back then, he's not doing this anymore. There's no way. But it was a summer course and it was called, I believe, Call of the Wild, where we all got, there was prerequisites to get into this class, but we all upperclassmen would meet with my professor and his friend. They're both very well-known authors and still are. We get into this little short bus, okay, meeting in the parking lot of what was called the Fox building back then, which was an old shoemaking factory that the school had bought and turned into one of the departments. But anyway, we're meeting in this parking lot. We never knew where we were going, but we'd always go every Monday, Tuesday, whatever it was, for the whole day. They'd take us to somewhere in nature. And in tow, you had to bring something that would alter your perception and your perception of what's going on around you. So you go out into nature and try to make the deepest connection with something. It could be anything, it could be a leaf, you know, and then you write on that. And that was essentially the class. But outside of that one, my favorite class, probably my screen printing classes. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're connected with Johns Hopkins, like they're starting to do MDMA trials and stuff like that, I feel like that might be a natural connection with that.
Yeah, it's crazy that the professor I was talking about, he works there too. Yeah, he's a literature guy out there. It's strange. They got all that stuff going on.
Yeah,
now.
Interesting connection. Well, cool. So then when did you start to get into like the body art sort of a situation? Like, was that something that started in college that you're like, oh, this would be a really
No, that was something that started in middle school.
Oh.
I read the book, The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. It's about a circus, essentially, and the tattooed man he's covered in tattoos, and every night one of his tattoos comes alive, and that's a different chapter of the book, you know. And so that was my first dip into tattooing when I didn't even know what tattoos were really until I read that book. And then my Aunt Jill started dating this guy, Gene, okay? And Gene was kind of a rough and tumble East Sider, which was foreign to my family, which had all grown up in Urbandale, Iowa at the time. So Gene, we meet him at Southridge Mall. I'll never forget him walking into the mall. I noticed on his arm a little stick and poke tattoo. I was like, oh, this guy's cool. This dude's really cool. Who's this Gene guy? And then he got up closer, just a real cool guy. He's a great friend of mine still to this day. And he's not my uncle anymore, but that's okay. But so Uncle Gene had these like wannabe gangster tattoos is exactly what they were. You know, like I think the thing on his arm was like a pie graph where it's, you go in front of a judge, you got this percent, that percent kind of getting off, or the jury, I don't know that stuff. Yes. But that's what he had. He had some like wannabe gangbanger tattoos. And every time I was around Gene, I was just like intrigued by him. And then I finally asked him one time, I was like, hey, Uncle Gene, how did you get those tattoos? Because I could tell there was something different about him, you know? And he told me the process. He said, I got some drawing ink. I got one of my mom's sewing needles, maybe it was his friend. And he's like, we just dipped it in, poked our skin. So then that got in my head. And as I said, my dad was a hobby artist, and my mom sewed. So as I'm sitting there talking to my Uncle Gene at my grandparents' table, probably during Christmas or something, I'm thinking, I have everything I need to tattoo myself.
I can do that.
So I did. I don't remember, it was relatively close to them, but I gave myself a tattoo on my calf, which I still have part of it. And the foolish thing about that, outside of being 14, 13, however old I was, giving myself a tattoo, was it was in the middle of my calf and I played sports.
Yeah.
So then, guess what Robbie got into? Tall socks.
Yes.
I made tall socks cool. I had to wear tall socks. I mean, I'm wrestling with tall socks on. You know, my dad's making fun of me. People are, but I had to hide that tattoo.
Right.
So yeah, I gave myself that tattoo and then another tattoo and then a couple on friends of mine and stuff like that. And I was like, once I started tattooing friends, I was like, I'm gonna get in trouble for this or something. Someone's gonna find out. So I kind of put the brakes on it until I got a fake ID. And then
you were tattooing people in high school and middle school.
This was middle school, the summer of 8th grade, I believe.
Oh
yeah. But either way, like I had the tattoo on my leg in 8th grade wrestling.
Right. And so you were tattooing your friends and people same way with the sewing needle and then,
my dad's. Oh, so I was using my dad's drawing ink because he did these pen and ink drawings. But I mean, this drawing ink, he hadn't touched it since probably like the early 90s or late 80s or something. But it was still good, you know.
Yeah.
Just India ink though, yeah.
Ooh, funny.
And then I got into art in high school really hard, like I mentioned, and I started going to this tattoo shop where back then it would be known as a street shop. They still exist, but you walk in and you're just flipping through a catalog on the wall.
I've seen it.
I want number 374, you know? So anyway, I got some of those tattoos, and then the guy tattooing me, somehow we started talking about me being an artist, and he's like, you never thought about drawing your own tattoos? And I was like, no, but from that day forward, I started doing it. And that guy, I don't know if he was impressed by the tattoos I was drawing a little bit, or he just saw something in me. But long story short, he called me my sophomore year of college. I was out in Baltimore, and he called me on my cell phone and offered me a job because he was just getting ready to open a bigger location with more spots, kind of like a state-of-the-art shop at the time. But he needed a few more artists, so he offered me an apprenticeship, and I told him no, that's not what I'm into. I thought at the time I was gonna teach either like high school art or college, something like that, but I was gonna be a teacher. And but the more I started thinking about it, and I was getting pretty heavily tattooed at the time. I had my sleeve and my throat tattooed and plenty of tattoos, but the more I started thinking about it, I really just wanted to be an artist my whole life. That's all I really cared about at the end of the day, which teaching is going to provide for me, you know, with just having all the time off and being in studio time. You get it as a professor or a teacher. But long story short, tattooing seemed like the best option and the biggest challenge there was as an artist, especially at that time. And I mean, the opportunities came about rarely for anyone to become an artist, you know, because it wasn't a saturated market at that time. Mm-hmm. Most of the people teaching, or most of the tattoo artists that have been in the industry for a long time, where you're kind of like rough and tumble bikers that are probably gonna like beat you or something at the end of the day, which my guy ended up being that taught me. But so somewhere around my sophomore year, I had a talk with him and told him that after college, I'll come work for you. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I never really looked back from there.
And he was,
as far as the industry goes,
back here.
He was in Des Moines.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where you did your apprenticeship, was in Des Moines.
Yeah, I started working at a shop in Baltimore, just kind of as their helper, their counter person, all that stuff. And then built up a lot of trust with them. They knew I was going to be going into the industry as a tattoo artist, and they didn't hold the highest standards out there. So I did tattoo some out there, not much, but from time to time I would. But yeah, I was tied into the industry there. I was working there, I was washing dishes, and I was working at the like campus art store too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then how long did you do like an apprenticeship? Like how long does a tattoo artist apprenticeship last?
My apprenticeship lasted a year and some change.
Okay.
Yeah. It was kind of like a forced environment. You know, there was nothing I could do to earn my way up the ladder quicker. He had a preset timeline that I didn't know about. I'm on that timeline. you know. And my apprenticeship, it was old school. It was terrible. I'm glad I went through it the way I did because it forced me to be at my best, I guess, you know, like there was only opportunity for failure in my apprenticeship. There was no opportunity for advancement, which was good. But the guy who taught me, he was an amazing tattoo artist. There's no doubt about that. He still is, but a terrible human. Yeah. And I mean, the longer I spent around him, the more I realized like why his wife comes with bruises all over her body, or why his best friends all of a sudden don't talk to him anymore. I mean, I started connecting the dots on who he was. So that ruined our relationship without a doubt. But I was always respectful towards him and always learned from him. So I'm thankful towards the guy. At the end of the day, he taught me how to do everything right, and how to keep it as a career, you know, the longevity side of it. He taught me that, but man, what a terrible human at the end of the day. Yeah. He really was bad. I could go on for days about that guy.
Oh, I bet. I can totally imagine.
That was the first time I ever experienced how loud a gun is shot inside of a building, you know? Like it's loud, especially when it's 6 or 7 times randomly fired throughout the business that he owns. Yeah, he was a bad guy. Bad dude.
Yikes.
If you're out there, Jack, I'm not scared of you.
Yeah. That's right. Good to know. Well, so then where do you start day one of a tattoo internship or apprenticeship? Is it like, here's how you
for me it was like put these diapers on and use them. You know, like it was terrible. Yeah. I mean, I didn't pick up a pencil or a pen or anything for 3 months during that apprenticeship, you know. I think I was just answering the phone and going to get them food and supplies and refilling the pop machine and vacuuming all the time, and I wasn't doing anything. I was just earning my spot, I guess, at the end of the day.
Do you remember the first time he let you tattoo on someone?
It was myself. There's no warning.
Oh.
Yeah, there's no warning at all. At the shop, and this was probably like 7 months in or something, somewhere around there, but it was just kind of one of those like, hey, you're tattooing yourself today. When I showed up to work, you know, I was like, okay, I'm tattooing myself today. And I had been practicing on grapefruit, palmettos, and pigskin. So, I mean, it wasn't the first tattoos I'd done. It was just the first ones on human flesh. And yeah, he picked the spot and everything. I drew it like right as he's sitting next to me, you know. And yeah, and what I learned looking back is like there's no real way to do a perfect tattoo on yourself in the spot I had to do it. So that was another example of him like constantly setting me up for just failure.
Where
he was a sick
it?
Man. It's like dead center of my right calf. So, you know, you're sitting with your heel up here,
completely contorted,
bent over, but then like the second you do this, your whole calf is bunched up.
Yeah.
So there's no way you can get a good stretch or anything like that. Like, if you're starting off tattooing, you tattoo your thighs.
Yes, and yeah, makes sense.
And on top of that, like no one will see it if they ever don't want to. It's not just smack dab on your calf. But so I did that, and then I had my second tattoo that was in black and gray, and then he had me do one like a couple days later. It was in color. And that one, that one on myself again, but this time he made me do it upper knee here. So it's like, once again, there was no way whatsoever
to do it well as you'd want.
Yeah. But it was funny, like the first praise he ever gave me was after I did my first tattoo, that black and gray one. There was this guy working in the shop who had been there for forever. He'd been tattooing 13 years, or more at the time, but he had issues with consistency big time. And, you know, as I'm doing this tattoo, everyone in the shop knows the apprentice is tattooing. You know, they all stop in, give me encouragement, whatever, talk shit, whatever, you know. But this guy comes around, you know, he was like a stinky pirate, just kind of grungy looking guy. Like he looked like Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, like intentionally.
Yeah.
But I get done with my tattoo and Jack screams out, well, at least it's better than so-and-so, you know? And so that just completely deflated this guy. So that was kind of funny because me and him always had a little camaraderie going on and stuff. But that was the first praise I ever got from the guy who taught me how to tattoo. It was at least better than the guy who's always messing up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, better than nothing,
A win's a win, baby.
A win is a win.
A win's a win.
That's awesome. So then do you remember the first tattoo that you did on someone else that wasn't you?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Nerve-wracking for sure.
Why?
Oh, I mean, I think the biggest reason is just because like I really didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, with tattooing you can understand everything, but unfortunately your knowledge is gained through making mistakes.
Sure.
Because you just made that mistake on someone else's skin, and it's a moment you don't want to relive. So you kind of like live in fear of doing that over and over again your first few years. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and I was figuring it out as I was going, because that's how you do it. And in the beginning, I was really worried about how was it feeling for them. You know, this was a close friend. It was my best friend's little brother. And so, you know, I didn't want to hurt the guy either. Yeah. So I had to get over that fear of hurting other people, mm-hmm. which I didn't realize until that moment when I'm sitting there inflicting pain on someone. But, and that was something I struggled with for a couple years. Like I just didn't like the hurting people side of it. But you just got to let it go eventually, right? Or you're never going to make it anywhere. So I let it go, and then the pressure was kind of off a lot after that, honestly. And then just gaining experience throughout the years and confidence, you know.
Sure.
Confidence will get you everywhere, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just took me time to build up the confidence that I knew going into what I was getting ready to do was going to be good, you know. But yeah, that first tattoo on somebody else was...
terrifying.
I mean, I didn't even know how to sit, you know, so
right.
I think... I had him sitting on a massage chair that you'd sit forward on, like at the mall. People get those massages and stuff. So he was leaned in pretty close to the ground, but I didn't know how to sit. And the tattoo took me way longer than it ever should have. It was a pretty big color tattoo. I think it probably took me like 9-10 hours, 12 hours maybe even.
In one sit?
And I stood up the whole time. So the next day, that whole week really, I had a debilitating back injury going on, and then after I did that tattoo on him, I was kind of cut loose. So I had my next several days lined up. So then I'm dealing with this like back problem I'd given myself, and I didn't know how to sit anyway. And then I had to just adjust to my back all the time. Oh man, it was wild. It was wild.
But you did it.
I did it.
It was good.
Yep.
So then,
stuck with it.
How long did you stay in Des Moines at that shop then?
That shop, I wasn't at very long, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hinted towards it, but yeah, the owner guy shot up the shop over a very small issue. We were only given 2 weeks vacation every year there. And so with no benefits or anything, he just said, you only take 2 weeks, you know, no matter what. If you're gonna work here, you get 2 weeks. So the pirate guy, he wanted one more week off because he liked to go to Amsterdam every year, and 2 weeks just wasn't fitting it for him. So he politely asked for one more week instead of the 2. And the owner, we were at House of Bricks, this bar that used to be in Des Moines at the time after work. And the owner took a bottle, broke it on the bar top, and literally went after this guy and like almost cut his ear off. And so the owner took off. He was probably afraid the cops were coming or something like that, because it was a full bar. And we told Pirate Guy, he's like, I gotta quit. Like, what am I can't have this happen, you know? So we're like, well, the other owner is with us at this time, and he agrees, like, yeah, it's time for you to go, man. Like this, I don't know how you can come back to work after him cutting your ear off for no reason. So we're packing up Dante's stuff at the shop. And the owner had surveillance cameras everywhere, but we weren't really thinking about anything. And so we are loading up his gear into my truck. We come back in to literally the owner just shooting from the front lobby to the back blindly. He unloaded his whole entire handgun into the business. And I mean, at that point, we're all like, okay, we're all done. Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't happy in the situation anyway. So it made leaving easy. So I was only there at that location for 6 months, and then I went to work as a very new tattoo artist. I mean, like I said, I kind of hadn't finished my apprenticeship at this point, but I walked into this shop called Outlaw on Ingersoll Avenue, The guy who owned it, his name is Scott Irwin. He goes by the name Kool-Aid, I guess, but he hired me on the spot. He got like 3 pages into my portfolio. He's like, okay, you're hired. You can start now.
Great.
And I was like, oh, okay, no more questions or nothing? He's like, nope, we got, whatever. And so he was just kind of hiring as many people as he can because he was a very in-demand tattoo artist at the time. And, the foot traffic into this place was immense. So I think we had, at the peak of Outlaw, maybe like 14, 15 tattoo artists packed in there, but we all stayed busy. And then Outlaw turned into Pink Elephant. Pink Elephant, I stayed there. Between Outlaw and Pink Elephant, I think I had like 14 years in between those two. And then I came out here to Collins.
Okay, so and Pink Elephant has multiple locations or
just
Ankeny?
the one location? Yeah, it's in
Ankeny,
Ankeny,
right?
on Ankeny Boulevard.
Yeah,
Ankeny.
I was gonna say,
Great
kind of-
shop,
yeah,
good people.
Kind of by like
it was a sad one to leave.
Salvation Army.
Yeah, right across the street from Salvation Army.
Yeah, I see it all the time.
Yep.
Okay, so then you were there, and when did you leave there? 2016, 2017?
2017, 2018,
okay.
I believe. Yeah, because I bought the building across the street July 2018, opened December 2018, I believe. Could have been 2017, but I think it's 2018. I think so.
How in the world did you Collins is not a destination for anyone, shall we say?
No.
And so how did you find this place? There's 483 people here.
Yeah.
How?
So
why?
One of my clients, who's also a childhood friend of mine, he works for Beck Seed Company. He did at the time. Now he's went out on his own. But anyway, he had his real estate license through Iowa Realty just to help friends out, flip property, stuff like that. So I hit him up first because I knew he'd know the little towns in Iowa. Cypress and I had lived in Ankeny the previous 8 years, and I did not want her going to middle school, high school in that environment for numerous reasons.
Okay, so that was the decision to go to the small town.
Yep.
Okay.
And I knew that when she got to about 3rd, 4th grade, I knew that was my plan. We're gonna find a small town, and I had grown up in a small town and held it dearly to me. I think it's the right way to grow up if you can.
Yeah.
So I wanted that for her.
And so was your plan always I'm going to find a spot to tattoo in this small town? Okay, you were thinking I'll find a small town, I'll find a house, and then I'll commute to work
every day. And this worked out well because it was 25 minutes to Ankeny. It gave me good decompressed time, stuff like that. It was an easy commute. But one of my plans was always, and the owner of Pink Elephant, I was very transparent with him about it. I mean, he knew that eventually I was going to open my own private studio. As to where that was going to be, I didn't really care. I just wanted my own spot. I had, my clients weren't all from Ankeny. They're all coming from somewhere else anyway. So I was it was good timing there because, if I was only tattooing people from Ankeny, Iowa, it would have been a different move. But my clients were coming from everywhere. So I knew wherever I ended up, they'd still come there, and I was we'd lived here for a year. We were walking our dogs, walked down Main Street here. And at that time, as you may or may not remember, I mean, there was nothing going on Main Street really at all. There was a for sale sign in that building. And I was like, well, let me put it on my phone. And I put it on my phone and it was City Hall. And I was like, well, the city must own it. So then, since the city did own it, it was just the perfect opportunity, and so I just jumped on it. I didn't think about it much. I bought the building without ever even being inside of it. It was perfect. Turned out it was perfect. Yeah, and as you know, operating in a small town, it's a better way to run a business if you can anyway.
Yeah,
it really is. Not only does it bring people from outside of town in town, and it also is just a lower cost to operate at the end of the day too, which is huge when you're running a small bit. Your overhead is your profit.
Yeah.
So being able to purchase it at a very reasonable price, and property tax being low, utilities being fairly low, all that stuff, it's the perfect place to do what I'm doing.
Right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and you, like you said, you have such a wide customer base from so far around. You are reliant on traffic to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yours is more word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yours is a unique enough service that people will travel for it.
Yep.
So in a town of 500 people, yours works.
Yeah, it does, without a doubt.
For sure.
But that was the funny thing when I was working on that building, it was a mess, much like not your kind of mess you had going on here, but it was a mess. And I mean, just the amount of office furniture and paperwork that had been left behind. I mean, I had people's abstracts that I had to get back to them.
Right.
A Rolodex with everybody's social security numbers, addresses, date of birth, like vital information that I had to sort through and figure out what's trash and what's not, and just removing everything from the building. I mean, it was a handful. But while I was working on it, people from the town, they'd stop by. Probably same thing happened with you, and everybody was like, they just couldn't wrap their mind around how a tattoo shop was going to work in a small town. They're like, there's only so many people here. People here don't even want tattoos. Yada, yada, yada. And then the first time someone said that to me, I was confused. I was like, what do you think my plan is? Because I hadn't thought about that. And then I explained to everybody, like, no, I'm not hoping to turn Collins, Iowa into a bunch of tattooed freaks. That's not my plan at all. I'd rather not tattoo anybody here.
It'd be cool if you did, though.
Yeah. But I didn't see that coming. So that was one of the things that I didn't anticipate, was that people here would want tattooed, And I don't take a lot of new clients or anything like that anyway. So that has led to like local frustration with me, probably. Like no one knows how to get an appointment with me. But I'm okay with that. But yeah, funny thing, like it was a funny time in my life with everybody stopping by, just with the old, you know what you're doing here, bud? Like, yeah, no, I got this, man. But I know the same stuff was happening with you, especially when you first came to town. People were like, she sells bugs?
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's what she does.
Yes.
Well, how is she gonna make that work? It's like, that's not if you have to think like that, you never make it, man. So you don't get it.
Well, that's it. And I was saying this to Willie all the time. You're not your target market.
No.
So like, just remember, like when you're talking about things, when you're thinking about things, you're not your target market. And I think, for yours, again, yours is so unique that people will travel for it.
Yeah.
I think they're right. If something in this town required like local support, local traffic, it's tough with 483 people.
I can't imagine.
I can't imagine either.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the challenges. It's one of the opportunities for, people like you, people like me, who we are location agnostic, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter where we are. Our market is our market, and we can make it work, and we'll take the lower overhead, and ultimately that's essentially why we're here.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to hear it from the perspective of people that think of it from like a traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine the looks and conversations you had, especially
it was
in
wild.
the beginning.
It was wild.
I can imagine.
It was wild. Yeah, I don't think at least 90% of this town thought I'd be out of business within a few months.
Yeah. And
for sure.
Right. And now cut to frustrated because the locals can't get an appointment, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way that tends to work out, but
yep.
Whatever. So, okay, so you've been operating here in Collins for almost 5 years then.
I think this was my 5 year in December, yeah.
Okay.
Someone
awesome.
Brought that up as I was tattooing them, and I was like, yeah, I made it 5 years, yeah. Yeah.
So how has, self-employment been? It has its ups and downs. It's
it's the ultimate roller coaster ride. Highest highs, lowest lows, Yeah. There's been times where I've really wondered if I will make it, and there's been bountiful times where I know I'm never going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, highest highs, lowest lows, for sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Do you remember your first paying customer here at Small Town Tattoo?
Yeah, I can never forget him.
Why?
He's one of my best friends in the world, and just an all-around amazing person. But he was also my boss, the owner of Pink Elephant. I would never say he had a boss role by any means, because there was no need for him to facilitate that with me, because we'd been buddies for so long. But yeah, it was my homeboy Mark Jagerson that owns Pink Elephant. Yeah.
And he came out here for you to be your first tattoo at your shop.
Yeah.
That is freaking cool.
It was rad.
That is.
And
cool.
I gave him a hockey tattoo, which is a sport that has changed his life. He didn't start playing hockey until a few years, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago now. But anyway, I got him into hockey. And so yeah, we did a hockey tattoo on him, which was really neat. That was special.
That's awesome.
He's a rad dude too.
Awesome.
Couldn't have been a better first client. Yeah.
So cool. So then Talk to me about that, about the hockey thing, about the coaching thing. Like, what all are you coaching? Like, how did you get into that?
Now I'm only coaching high school cross country and track now. At Collins Maxwell, yeah, in the community. It's awesome. My first taste of coaching and what got me into it all was youth hockey. Essentially, I had played very high level roller hockey as a kid and a teenager, but my parents never had the money, I guess, for me to play ice hockey, but it was something I picked up very easily once I started playing as an adult. So I was, pretty good at hockey, pretty knowledgeable about the sport. When our kids were very tiny, probably 4-year-olds or something like that, 4 or 5-year-olds, we had a little group of kids that were pretty decent, and we wanted to take them up to the Iowa games in Dubuque to play. But the one issue was there was no one to coach. And so since I had the most knowledge of the game out of the group of parents, I coached them. We won, we had a blast. I loved coaching. So then I started getting involved with Des Moines Youth Hockey, doing their Learn to Play program, like kind of like an intro to the sport for kids that are new to it, teach them how to play so they can join a league and a team. I did that for a couple years, and then I started coaching for Des Moines Youth Hockey at their younger ages. And then I started a girls hockey program with my buddy Chris called Des Moines Lady Wild that's still around. And then once we started that, we co-directed the program. So I was director and head coach of the highest level team we had at the time. Coached that for many years, and then started coaching travel softball, travel ball. I was still coaching hockey during that time, doing skills clinics and stuff like that too. And then there just kept being a need for high school coaches out here. And so, I knew I could coach most sports at high school level. So I got my high school certification, and kind of took a while for them to hire me on. The crazy little tattooed guy took a little while, but they brought me on this year, and man, we broke every school record in cross country at -1. Took boys and girls conference champs for the first time ever. Took our first team to state ever. 3 individual qualifiers on the girls' side. We tore it up, and I had a blast too. So, now that I'm going to be the distance coach for boys and girls track out here. That's starting up pretty soon. So I'm really looking forward to it for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's fun.
Very
But I love coaching. That's my favorite thing I do.
Very
Hands
cool.
down.
So then you would have been a natural teacher, art teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Totally
It would have been cool.
Totally would fit.
For sure.
Sweet. My favorite teacher from high school is my art teacher.
It should be. If the
awesome.
best teacher at the school is not the art teacher, you need to find a new one.
Oh my gosh, she is the coolest.
Yeah,
The
that's
coolest.
Cool. That was
Also,
the same with me in my high school and elementary. It
yes,
was amazing.
she's also covered in tattoos. Like in her 7, she's just
My kind of person.
Coolest human I think that I've ever met. Shirley Gooch, shout out if she's listening.
I believe you.
So cool. So were you training with the cross country team as you were coaching? Because you log yourself.
It's
an
everyday.
miles,
Like I show up ready to race.
Yes.
Yeah. Now there's days where what I tried to do every practice was run with every kid. So, and I was pretty successful at that throughout. As the season got deeper, you're only as strong as your weakest link. You know that playing basketball. It's a fact. So throughout, as the season progressed, I spent more time with the back of the pack than I did the front. But I absolutely challenged the front kids every practice for sure, yeah. But especially at the beginning of the season. And then once state hit, I teamed up with our top runner on the girls' side a little more, and challenged her as much as I possibly could too. But yeah, I show up ready to race these kids, and they know it. They know it. Coach Robbie can run.
You gotta keep them humble.
That's right.
Keep them humble.
That's right.
So then, talk to me a little bit about the whole ultra thing. Like, I don't know if you know, but I have some ultras in my past.
Hell yeah.
So I used to do World's Toughest Mudder, which is 25 and a half hour obstacle course race.
Yep.
So I have 2 50-mile bibs from those,
there you go.
With penalties was way over 50 miles. But that's another story for another day.
Sure.
But I don't typically do, like, I look at a marathon, people run marathons, and I'm like, that's boring. So like the only marathon I've ever done was with a 35-pound pack in the desert in New Mexico. You seem like that kind of person too. Like,
yeah, I'm
why
the
would
same.
I
I would never
marathon?
run I ran a lot of road races when I was a little kid, but that's just because that's what was there. And I was good at running, so it's like, why not, you know? But I would never run a road race now. Unless the exception would be if I had an athlete and let's say they were doing their first half, doing their first full, wanted some support. All right, I'll be there. That sounds good. You know what I mean? But no.
Never on your
Way
own.
too boring.
Right.
I mean, you'll never catch me running roads anywhere. I like to get out in nature and find what's there.
Yeah. So when did you start getting into the like ultra distance kind of stuff?
I got into it late 2019, going into 2020, which good timing. Yeah. So that's when I started dipping my toes into trail running.
Okay.
I had done quite a bit of trail running throughout my life, but never something I committed to doing regularly. But in 2019, I wasn't in the best health, so to speak. You know, I wasn't looking at myself happy in the mirror kind of stuff. I wasn't in a bad way by any means, but I knew I could be in better shape. So I've always been an outdoors person, so I just started running trails. And then, a little half mile at a time, daily, stuff like that. And then just have slowly progressed my time spent running from day one up until now, which has led me to the ultra world. Yeah.
Sure. So what was your first ultra? Do you know?
My first race was the stuffed turkey endurance races in just 2022 at Jester. I did their 50 miler.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd ran ultra distances prior to that in training and stuff, but that was my first race.
Was your 50 miler?
Yeah.
Did you think when you lined up for that start line, did you think I'm finishing this for sure?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, you know how it goes. I've always been that way. If I'm showing up, like I will do it.
Yeah.
I'll find a way. Like I don't think through any race still now very deeply. You know, I have a strategy. I have a plan. I'm prepared. But other than that, you know, like there's going to be things coming my way out on the trail that I don't see coming. So it's just literally a come what may situation. Like whatever comes my way, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You know? And that is just, once again, like with ultra trail races, the challenge is so deep and so there. You don't have to look for it. They come to you just sometimes every step.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm hooked on it now, is because the possibilities are bountiful. Like it just never ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So you did the 50 miler in 2022. And then what'd you do this year?
This year,
yeah, crazy.
I did. So I set my race schedule up this year very specifically. One of the things I knew I was going to do coming in is I was going to overtrain. Another thing I knew that I was going to do coming into 2023, not this year, but I guess last year now. But I knew every race was going to be a progression into the next. That was my plan. So I started my race season in Alabama at DeSoto State Park. I ran a 50K mountain race there. And then I ran the Palisade Punisher, which is an 8-hour looped race in Palisade Kempler State Park in Iowa here. And then I'm missing something, but that's okay. And then I ran Midwest States 100 in, I don't know how to say it, but a national forest up in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And then I ran the stuffed turkey again, but the 100 miler this time. And that was just the end of November. That was my last race of 2023. I did another one in 2023, but I can't think of what it was.
So you did 200 milers this year.
Well,
what was
Midwest States was an epic failure, but
you DNF'd it?
No. So here's the tricky thing about Midwest States.
Okay.
Number one, it's put on by Ornery Mule Racing, which doesn't disappoint in the challenge of the course. This was on the Ice Age Trail. It's like one of the oldest footpaths in North America. So it's a little skinny single track trail that's marked, but it's marked with like yellow paint swatches, you know? And sometimes they're few and far between. But nighttime came, And I had, that Thursday before, I had foolishly ran with the cross country team. We did a hour and a half creek run on the Indian Creek here in town. So I had worn a pair of shoes that had holes in the tops that are trail running shoes of mine that I just love. I don't know what I was thinking, but I wore them. Anyway, I had a lot of sand in my socks and wet feet for hours. So I had a raw big toe, which I knew going into the race was going to be an issue at a certain point. And it really was. It hit me hard at mile 40 something. But anyway, so nighttime had fallen, and there's very, when it gets dark, it's dark in certain parts of the world, and this is dark. And I had started hallucinating a little bit, which is normal. I expected it. Little things, there were these puffball mushrooms on the pine trees everywhere. And in my mind, or my vision, they were popping up one at a time. Like I'd see a tree with puffball mushrooms and they'd be like, bloop, 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 bloop. I knew it wasn't happening, but I was seeing it that way. And then I started seeing bears in the woods, which were just burnt stumps, or dogs. Certain things were going on mentally that I wasn't fully comfortable with. And I got to it, my toe was absolutely throbbing and bleeding. I tried many things to remedy it, but at that point it was gone. So that got into my head too. And I took a slip and fall, my first fall during the race, during the middle of the night. And long story short, the one of the trickiest parts about that race is you get to the finish line. And then the race director's there, and you have to, if you're running the 100-miler, you have to consciously choose you can take your finish in the 100K, or say you're going to continue to the 100-miler and face a DNF. You got to head back out instead of out and back at that point. And I don't know what had fully happened or gotten to my head, but I ended up running 64 miles out there. But at mile 61, I knew I was done.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do to convince myself to keep going. But the only reason I had made that decision was because the person who was in first for the 100-mile had came at me in the dark, and they had a pacer with them. My pacer, who was coming out there with me, he had a tragedy in his family. And unfortunately, he had a funeral that Saturday for this family member that had passed away. So I lost my pacer that week, and I had thought I mentally prepared for not having someone else to go back out in the woods with me, but ultimately it got into my head. And then the second place person it came when I was probably about a half mile from the start finish area, had a pacer. And then as I'm seeing the start finish area, everyone has the pacer bib. So I'm coming up to the first well-lit spot. I've been across in hours and hours. And everybody just has pacer bibs on. And I just let that get into my head. And one reason or another, I took my 100K finish, and I instantly was like, I went and sat down. And I was like, why did I do that?
Yeah, I had more.
Why did I do that? And I did have more. I felt fine. I walked perfectly fine after that race. I didn't find what I was there for. It was an amazing experience, a beautiful race, a great challenge, but I failed at the end of the day. I just wasn't enough. But it happened for a reason, without a doubt. I left stronger. I left with more knowledge. I left knowing that I will never do that again. No way. There's no way I would ever stop racing again. So, it worked out. It really did. But yeah, I finished the 100K. So I think I got 7th or 8th in the 100K. And that was the dagger in my heart, was when I dropped from the 100-miler, they tell you your place. Mm-hmm. Which I thought maybe I'd look back and kind of get an idea where I was at. I was in third.
No.
I think there's 60, 70, 80 people or something like that running that race. So I was in a really good spot. And I was even ahead of pace for my goal. I wanted to get through that one in less than 24 hours.
Which ultimately...
I was there. I was 100% there. My average pace was 13:40, something like that.
But ultimately, in the ultra world, that could have been part of the reason you finished at the 100K as well.
Yeah.
It's the little tweaks, as you can be 15 seconds above what your target pace is. You're oh, I totally got this, but that can blow you up.
You're dead.
Yeah, it can blow you up.
So I'm trying to find that balance now.
Yeah.
That 100-miler in Jester, I took a real conservative approach to it intentionally because I just wanted to finish. Mm-hmm. But then once again, I could have went more, I could have gave more, I had more in me without any doubt. But it's all stepping stones to get to where I want to go, so it's everything's working out good. It's cool.
Yeah. So then what's next on the ultra side?
I got the Queenie Backyard Ultra in south of St. Louis, or western St. Louis, Queenie Park. I got that. That's my next one up though, and that's a qualifier for the World Championships. So it's a big one. It's a real big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is that the goal then? Is maybe make World Championships?
I mean, that's what I'm showing up believing I can do. But a backyard, it's the same thing with any ultra. A lot of things can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on the same even playing field in those. It's a 4.2 mile loop, pretty tough loop. I think it's got about 400 feet of gain throughout it, and you have 1 hour to complete it. You have to be back in the starting block on the hour every hour. If you're not there, you're out. And it just goes until the last person does a loop on their own. So I would just show up and do my best, man. But I know I can compete very well there, and that's what I plan on doing for sure. Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Now I'm pumped. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, the ultra world is its own just weird little offshoot of running that I think it's cool. I like it. Like, I think it's super non-glamorous.
Oh yeah,
and
low key.
Yeah.
They're it's starting to grow. Even just the years I've been involved with it, I've seen a lot of growth in the past 3 or 4 years. It's going to grow into something much bigger than it is now. But I think everybody I'm talking to, especially people that have been in the game for a long time, they're just kind of like enjoying it while it's still what it used to be.
Right.
But there's corporate takeover, all that stuff happening, like not capping races, just kind of like Congo line races going on out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a beautiful world. I mean, I've never been around more genuinely amazing people than I have at a race.
Right.
Ever.
Like I said, it's just it's a different world. It's a different mindset. It's you against your demons. Even if, it's one
you
of
will
those
face
things.
them.
Yep. And like you said, I was in 3rd place, but like you could have just as easily been in 12th, 13th, 15th, whatever. Wouldn't have mattered.
No.
The outcome's the same, you know, and I don't know. I like ultras. If I had more free time, I'd probably get back into it.
That's the thing. You need it, man.
Yes.
If you don't have free time, that's why a lot of people that are competitive in it are my age.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's because like we got a little more free time nowadays, man. Teenage kids that don't need us all the time. More stable on the income side. So, you need the free time though. If you don't have the free time, you could it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, and I'll maybe get back to it at some point in life. I don't know. But then, so you have a dog. Lola. That she runs a lot of those training miles with you.
She does, yeah.
What is her story though? She's got a cool story.
Yeah, we smuggled her back from Puerto Rico with some fake paperwork, if we're being honest. Yeah. She's a street dog. She was a puppy when we brought her back. Vet said I think she was like 12, 14 weeks, something like that. But yeah, that dog can run like the wind blows.
Yeah.
She sure can.
That's awesome.
And she's the best training partner. But I don't know, now that she's getting a little more knowledge and knows maybe what we'll be doing when we pull up to a trail, Lola decides when she wants to run now. Like she will tell me no happily. We drove down to Greenwood in Des Moines last week and she's just like, no, I'm not getting on the car, man.
Yeah, I'm just going to say.
Like, okay, I'll take you back home. That you should have made that decision before now. But now, what I do now is I ask her before I leave the house, like, you want to run? And if she wants to run, she comes to the door. If she doesn't, she stays. But about half the time she wants to come with. Depends if we ran the day before or not. She likes her days off a little bit more now. That's cool.
Might be a little sore. Needs a little
recovery. Yeah. Needs a little recovery time.
Totally get it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, cool. Is there anything else that you want? What common misconception, anything you want people to know that maybe they don't know about small town tattooing in general, ultra, whatever?
I think like to tie it into some of the things you were talking about in one of your episodes I listened to is there is a lot of opportunity in small town America. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know if it's ever been greater because small towns in general have been dying off for so long now that there's buildings like the ones we have bought that take, a lot of sweat equity and some investment. But they're out there and there's very few places in the world that have the opportunities that we do in this country, along with the opportunities that are in little towns that are close to you. that if you open a business in one of those towns, the one thing you don't need to worry about is like once you're open and they know it's a legitimate business, everyone in the town's gonna love you. And you know, you're gonna have people who don't, no matter what, but like in general, they're just gonna be so happy you're here that they will talk about you when you're not around. That's for sure, and in a positive light, because they're just so grateful to see some life coming back into their community that their family has been in for decades, if not longer, you know? So yeah, if anybody is out there listening and is thought about it, just do it. I mean, at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is you own some property in a small town, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You can always invest in property. It's a sure shot.
Right, for sure. So if people want to find you or follow you,
you can. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is too.
I was just gonna say.
There's no way.
Like, yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like
there's very little way to do either,
and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's the way you want it.
Come to my shop. I'm there Monday through Friday, pretty much every day, from like 8 a.m. to 2 to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can. Any other way is not gonna work.
Right.
Including text messages to my own personal cell phone number. Like if it's about work, there's usually one day a month that I secretly dedicate to getting back to the people I can, and that's what I do. So you can send a message to my shop Facebook or to me personally. I'm not going to get back to you right away, and maybe not at all.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you're ever in Collins, Iowa, and you happen to see Robbie's teal Prius,
Stop in.
front,
Yeah,
stop
everybody's welcome to stop in. Say hi, get some coffee, eat some candy, do whatever. Join the strange conversation that's going on. Yeah, but yeah, there's no real way to get a hold of me anymore.
Awesome.
That's good.
That's the way you like it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
lurk the shadows.
I like it. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about this.
Thanks for letting me, buddy. This was cool.
Of course. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Yeah.
Yeah, boy.